Imagine driving through the quiet streets of Memphis late at night when, out of nowhere, you see a familiar face, none other than Elvis Presley himself, stepping out of a sleek car, dressed head to toe in a police uniform. It's a sight that feels almost surreal. Yet there he is, the king of rock and roll, looking every bit the part of an officer ready for duty. You might wonder, what could Elvis possibly be doing here, in the middle of the night, dressed like a cop? Tonight, we're diving into an unexpected side of Elvis, a side you may not know about, his deep respect for law enforcement and the lengths he would go to show it. But that night, things took an astonishing turn that left police officers speechless. Just what unfolded on that dark Memphis street? And what did Elvis do that had everyone talking? Stick with us to uncover a story that reveals a surprising twist in the life of an American legend. Number 5. Introducing Elvis's fascination with law enforcement. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, wasn't just captivated by music. He held a lifelong admiration for those who upheld the law, a fascination that many fans might find surprising. Behind the glitz and glamour of his stage persona, Elvis had a strong respect for law enforcement, a connection that ran so deep it became a genuine passion. Elvis loved everything about the police, so much so that he began collecting official police badges from departments all over the United States. This wasn't just a casual hobby. To Elvis, each badge symbolized honor and dedication, values he admired and wanted to show his appreciation for. He often wore police-style attire, both for fun and as a sign of respect, letting the world know that he saw himself as a part of this brotherhood, at least in spirit. Living in Memphis, Elvis built close friendships with local officers, forging bonds that went far beyond fanfare. His respect and admiration led police departments nationwide to grant him honorary badges as tokens of appreciation for his support, making Elvis feel like he truly belonged to this unique community. The king was known to show up at police stations unannounced, sitting down to chat with officers, drinking coffee, and just soaking in their stories from the field. Over time, his personal collection of badges grew as more officers saw him as an unofficial member of the force, gifting him emblems from departments coast to coast. His friends say that these badges weren't just keepsakes for him. They were symbols of the sacrifice and courage that he so deeply respected in those who served and protected. One of Elvis's closest friends, Jerry Schilling, would later remark that Elvis's respect for the uniform went beyond admiration. Elvis saw police work as a noble duty, Schilling recalls, and he was always willing to step in if he thought he could help. Having served in the army himself, Elvis felt a personal connection to the discipline and commitment that police officers embodied, viewing them as unsung heroes who upheld justice in everyday life. For Elvis, the world of law enforcement wasn't a far-off fantasy. It was a reality he respected and valued deeply, and as fate would have it, one night would bring him face to face with a situation that would test just how far he was willing to go. What happened next was a moment no one could have predicted, and it would leave those around him, and the police officers involved, in awe. Number 4. Setting the scene. The night of the incident. It was a typical night in Memphis in the early 1970s, the kind of quiet southern evening when the city felt calm, even a bit sleepy. But as Elvis Presley cruised down the familiar streets, his eyes caught a sudden burst of movement on the roadside, a struggle unfolding between two police officers and a man they were trying to detain. The suspect resisted fiercely, his movements wild under the streetlights as the officers attempted to gain control. To any passerby, it might have been a scene to avoid, a chaotic moment best left to those in uniform. But not for Elvis. Without a second thought, he pulled his car to the side, his heart racing. The king of rock and roll was about to become something entirely unexpected that night. Dressed, as he often liked to be, in his full police-style attire, Elvis stepped out of his car with a purpose. He wore the uniform not just as a costume, but as a mark of respect, complete with one of his prized badges gleaming on his chest. Elvis didn't hesitate as he walked up to the officers, his famous figure cutting through the darkness, instantly shifting the attention of everyone around. To the officers, who were deep in the intensity of the moment, seeing Elvis Presley stride up to the scene must have been almost surreal. Here was a man recognized worldwide, yet he was walking toward them, not away, ready to offer his assistance as if he were one of their own. As Elvis approached, the officers' expressions flickered between surprise and intrigue. They never expected the king of rock and roll to arrive in the middle of a tense confrontation, especially not dressed in uniform, looking every bit the part of an officer himself. Elvis calmly introduced himself, his presence alone enough to momentarily calm the storm around them. He stood there, poised and respectful, asking if there was anything he could do to help. For a moment, it was as if time had stopped. The officers, taken aback by this larger-than-life figure, saw not just a celebrity, but a man who deeply respected their role and was willing to stand alongside them. This night would become an unforgettable story for all involved, but little did they know, the true impact of Elvis's presence was just beginning to unfold. Number 3. The dramatic moment. Elvis steps in. As Elvis moved closer to the tense scene, his calm, steady steps seemed to radiate an unexpected authority. The officers, who had been grappling with the suspect's resistance, paused for a split second, taken aback by the presence of the king himself. Elvis, with his deep, reassuring voice, introduced himself politely, addressing the officers by rank, a gesture that spoke to his respect for those in uniform. His familiar face, so often seen on stage or in movies, now stood before them, unexpectedly transforming a heated moment into one of surprise and calm. It was as though the weight of his presence alone had a calming effect, slowing the moment down just enough for everyone to catch their breath. Without missing a beat, Elvis turned his attention to the suspect, his expression a mix of understanding and firmness. He looked the man in the eye and, with a few calm and direct words, urged him to cooperate with the officers, assuring him that everything would go smoothly if he simply calmed down. Elvis had a way of connecting with people, whether in front of thousands of fans or in a tense roadside encounter. His words seemed to resonate, bridging the divide between the officers and the man they were detaining. For the suspect, it must have been an extraordinary moment, to be addressed by Elvis Presley himself, a man who carried with him an undeniable aura of authority and compassion. After briefly speaking with the suspect, Elvis turned back to the officers, respectfully offering his assistance. This wasn't the king of rock and roll seeking attention or trying to play hero. It was a genuine gesture from a man who held a deep respect for the officers' work and simply wanted to lend a hand. With humility, he asked if there was anything he could do to help, showing a rare hands-on approach that few could have anticipated. The officers, now fully aware that Elvis was both serious and genuinely concerned, welcomed his presence, sensing that his involvement had already brought a sense of control to the situation. Elvis's actions that night weren't just about stepping in, they were about standing beside those he admired, showing that even a man of his stature saw the value in supporting and respecting the work of those who served. Number 2. Testimonials from friends and officers. Those close to Elvis often recall his deep respect and admiration for the police, a respect that went far beyond just words. Bill Morris, sheriff of Shelby County, was one of the many who witnessed Elvis's sincere dedication to law enforcement. Sheriff Morris fondly remembered the late-night visits when Elvis would drop by the station unannounced, just to chat with the officers and share a cup of coffee. Elvis wanted to understand the realities of their work, often asking questions and listening to their stories with genuine interest. Elvis didn't see himself as above anyone, Sheriff Morris said. He had this incredible way of making everyone feel valued, and he respected the officers as if he were one of them. Those casual conversations became regular, and for the officers, having Elvis Presley sit among them, talking shop and sharing laughs, was a surreal yet cherished experience. Elvis's admiration for the police wasn't limited to conversations. He frequently contributed to their needs, often without fanfare. His friend and spiritual advisor, Larry Geller, shared that Elvis took note whenever he heard of a department short on resources, finding ways to provide quietly. Geller recalls how Elvis would fund the purchase of equipment or even donate vehicles, ensuring the officers had what they needed to do their jobs safely. Elvis made these contributions discreetly, never seeking the spotlight for his acts of generosity. Elvis saw these guys as unsung heroes, Geller remarked. He wanted them to have everything they needed, and he did it because he cared, not because he wanted the recognition. To Elvis, supporting the police wasn't about the headlines. It was a personal mission to back those he deeply respected. His bodyguards, who traveled with him across the country, also spoke about Elvis's protective instincts and respect for peacekeepers. Sonny West, one of his longtime security team members, often saw Elvis step into tense situations with the kind of fearlessness and calm that surprised even the toughest in their group. Elvis couldn't stand seeing someone out of control or in a dangerous situation, West shared. He respected what police officers did every day, putting themselves on the line to keep people safe. For Elvis, stepping up to protect others wasn't just something he expected from officers. It was something he felt responsible for as well. Whether it was helping calm down an unruly fan or intervening to keep the peace, Elvis approached situations with a unique blend of strength and compassion. For him, honoring law enforcement was more than admiration. It was a shared sense of duty that he carried with him wherever he went. Number 1. Revealing Elvis's heroic and unexpected actions. As the night drew to a close, the scene on that Memphis roadside transformed from a chaotic struggle to an unusual moment of unity, all thanks to Elvis's calm and commanding presence. With just a few well-chosen words and his willingness to step in, he had diffused a tense situation, allowing the officers to regain control without further escalation. The suspect, who had been resisting arrest with unbridled energy, seemed almost awestruck by Elvis standing before him, an unexpected authority that inspired cooperation where resistance had once been. The officers, who moments earlier were caught in a physical struggle, now stood beside Elvis, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. The tension lifted, leaving only the remarkable memory of the night the king of rock and roll had stepped in to help them. In the days that followed, the officers couldn't help but share their gratitude and surprise at Elvis's intervention. One of them later reflected that Elvis had a kind of respect for their work that went beyond admiration. It was something more unshakable, a genuine respect for those who served and kept the peace. He wasn't there to play the hero. He was there because he believed in what we did, one officer said. For them, Elvis's actions weren't about showing off or gaining publicity. Rather, he treated the officers as equals, lending his support in a way that felt both personal and authentic. It was a moment they would never forget, a story to tell their families and friends about how a music icon stepped out of his role as a star and, for a brief moment, became one of them. Elvis's intervention that night on the Memphis streets was more than a spontaneous act of goodwill. It was a testament to his legacy of unwavering support for law enforcement. This incident, like so many quiet acts of kindness throughout his life, showed a side of Elvis that the public rarely saw, a side that respected the sacrifices of those who put their lives on the line. These were the moments that defined Elvis, not just as an icon, but as a man who believed deeply in supporting those who served. His legacy lives on not only through his music, but through stories like this, stories that reveal the king as more than a performer. He was a man who valued courage, duty, and the bonds of community, and he showed it in moments just like this one, forever etched in the memory of those who were there that unforgettable night. We'd love to hear from you. What do you think about this lesser-known side of Elvis? Did this story change the way you see him? Share your thoughts, opinions, and any Elvis stories you might know in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going and celebrate the King's legacy together.